Good afternoon from India, and I'm sure it is good evening in South Korea. It's a wonderful occasion that the Gandhi Cultural Community of Korea and the Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti, we have joined hands together to find and see and brainstorm on how we can promote Gandhian ideas and Gandhian values in South Korea. We start with Professor Swaran Singh himself. And Professor Swaran Singh is the professor and chairman of the Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also the president of the Asia Scholars, and also he is Asia-wide Network and the General Secretary of the Indian Congress of Asian and Pacific Studies. He is a very distinguished professor, and he's been an advisory member of the Communities Without Border. He is also with the Institute of National Security Studies, Sri Lanka, Colombo, and adjunct senior fellow, China, India, the Charhar Institute, Beijing, and the visiting professor of China, West Normal University. So I think we will be able to, all of us are going to benefit from his profound understanding of the thing and how Gandhian values are so important in the current geopolitical situation. And also, most importantly, what could the Gandhi community, South Korea, do to promote Gandhian ideas in the country of South Korea? Professor Swaran Singh, the floor is all yours, please.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very interesting discussion today. In fact, the way some of these semantics appear during our conversations, for example, this is a collaboration between Gandhian community, cultural community in Korea, in South Korea. I think that's itself a reflection of the mindset of looking at yourself as a cultural community rather than as an association or organization. And of course, working together with the Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti from New Delhi. It's a great initiative by Professor Lakhbinder Singh and other colleagues of his. Likewise, I think the title of today's discussion about promoting Gandhian values and philosophy in South Korea, that itself speaks about how the very formidable and fundamental challenge, which is where Gandhi comes to us as a savior, is the hit on basic human values that the world is facing today, with enormous onslaught of technology, of tensions between nation states, of other kind of threats which were never perceived of before, whether it is pandemics or human trafficking or drug trafficking, or you could talk about terrorism, for example. All of these perhaps definitely underline the relevance of Gandhi, but I think the way we have kind of created this the title of discussion of Gandhian values and philosophy reflects how intense and deep discussion we are hoping to have in today's meeting. And I am extremely honored to be part of this discussion and sit together with very, very eminent scholars and Gandhians, of course. And let me just say the first revelation to me personally was when I received this invitation to speak on this platform, is to begin to look at South Korea's interest in Gandhi. And I want to also thank you sincerely for awakening me to South Korea or Korea's own cultural traditions of peace and their consciousness and engagement with Gandhi and his ideas. Your invitation allowed me to become a little more aware of not only how great names like Ban Ki-moon or President Moon Jae-in have used Gandhi in their speeches, but how experts have done serious work and published articles in journals, in Korean journals, exploring and examining Gandhi. And that was a very good feeling that I was lucky to be part of this discussion, that I came to be a little more aware of Korea's own cultural traditions of peace, Korea's cultural traditions, even during the liberation struggle against Japanese. There was a whole group of people who felt inspired by Gandhi. Of course, we in India talk of Gandhi as a global citizen, and of course, multiple freedom struggles and iconic leaders were influenced by Gandhi, no doubt. But I think to me, as one individual, the revelations of the connection with Korea and South Korea, and how several South Korean institutions are promoting peace studies was interesting. And then the link, of course, to a very large number of Korean citizens who are Buddhists. And that link to India again becomes very interesting. So I think it's a great revelation to me to be part of this discussion, and therefore develop a kind of a sense of linking Gandhi to Korea itself. And then, of course, linking Gandhi to today's challenges that we face. The first challenge that I wish to underline is the very existential challenge. Shall we survive as a human civilization if we continue to pursue the roadmaps that human civilization has followed and continues to follow? You can notice that among several other metaphors becoming very, very popular in today's narratives, sustainability has become very, very significant challenge. Can we sustain things that world is pursuing? And there could not be any better scholar, philosopher, icon, saint to engage than Gandhi. Gandhi has so much to share with us about his everyday experience to his overarching philosophy of the world. Whether you talk about his detailed discussions in his autobiography about dietary, what should one be eating on everyday basis? How can one control diet to control disease? And then, of course, extension of that, a very revolutionary idea of fasting. Fasting for very interesting reasons. Not as a matter of protest, as we sometimes understand, but with much pious, much spiritual focus on cleansing one's own soul, as Gandhi says, but also influencing the soul of your adversaries. So, very, very interesting way of looking at how a simple method of controlling one's diet can not only take care of diseases, and again, when you talk of sustainability, we understand that pandemics are becoming an enormous challenge. Last 20 years, if you see whether it is Zika or Ebola or SARS or H1N1, one after another, and now, of course, the coronavirus, is a reflection that in future pandemics are going to be something the world will continue to face. They are not going to disappear. It's not like next pandemic will happen after 100 years. The last 20 years do not show that. And how clearly lessons lie in Gandhian values and philosophy of not eating just because we can afford things, but eating in terms of ensuring that everyone on this planet should be able to eat and everyone on this planet should be able to sustain good health. So Gandhian values of everyday life are very significant that can address challenges of sustainability of village republics. He does not like heavy industries. We are going back to now the small and micro industrial enterprises, at least in India and many other countries, cottage industries, saving the environment. In fact, he absolutely is uncomfortable with Marxism, but also shares many things that are common to Marxist philosophy and Gandhian philosophy. The alienation of artisan from his product is very critical to Gandhi. The whole industrialization is alienation, and how you see what kind of diseases are increasing in the world. Depression is increasing around the world. Diabetes is increasing in the world because we are increasingly disconnected from things that we do. We are not feeling connected with things that we are doing, whether we are doing this discussion here or whether we are producing a kind of artifact or innovating something new. the connection of creator and creation is diminishing over a period of time. And Gandhi believes that individuality is where creativity lies, and therefore he talks of the least state. Another very important idea of Gandhi, which is recently in debate again as part of climate change mitigation, adaptation, and sustainability, is his idea of trusteeship. How revolutionary that idea is, that the whole Western idea of mixing your capabilities to nature or Mother Earth around us creates private property. The idea of private property is only in the Occident, not in the Orient. Gandhi says that we cannot be the owners. That is counterintuitive. That is a contradiction in terms. Because even my physique is a creation of my parents. So is my knowledge, creation of my society, my universities, my students. So if everything I am only taking from others, then I cannot be the owner. I can only be the trustee of whatever I have. And that's a very revolutionary idea he is presenting, which is closer to Marxism, that everyone contributes according to their capacities and takes according to their needs. But of course, Marxism talks of violence, which is antithesis of Gandhi. There's no class struggle for Gandhi. There are no classes for Gandhi. So trusteeship is another revolutionary idea which I think holds great value for us today. Because if we are only trustees, then we have to also be careful how do we pass it on to the future generations. The globe today, the global debates are today talking of what kind of earth we are going to leave for future generations. The moment you remove sense of ownership and treat yourself as a trustee of a product or body of knowledge, then that means you immediately become conscious of this is what you have inherited, you have kept it properly, and then this is how you will pass on to the future generations. How will you do that? I'm just picking up things that, Gandhi is, as you know, you could continuously study and speak and discuss for lifetime. I'm just nitpicking few things. Another very interesting idea of Gandhi is Gandhi talks of not sovereign states but sovereign citizens. And we notice today that with empowerment of information and communication technologies, each of us, each citizen is so much empowered in terms of connecting with the rest of the world, communicating with the rest of the world, knowing about the rest of the world. Of course, sometimes it also leads to stereotypes and caricaturing of things. But that kind of access was never available in human civilization. Sometimes I tell my young students that the information that they can scroll on their phone screen in 1 minute would have taken their grandpa maybe 10 to 15 years to collate and collect. Citizens today are enormously empowered, and that was the vision that Gandhi already had. Gandhi thought of sovereign citizens, where citizens have sufficient autonomy to decide what they wish to do and how they wish to really achieve their potential. And he wanted to focus therefore on creating the whole world as world of satyagrahis. And he says very interestingly that just like you train very rigorously your soldiers that will fight your war, which is a violent war, you need to as much rigorously train your non-violent soldiers, which is satyagrahis. So it is not something that is an option for the weak, as he says. It is an option for the strong. And if you look around us, Gandhi also talks of structural violence, which people like Johann Galtung have done enormous work on. There is so much violence around our civilizations, our human society, which is constantly increasing. And that makes Gandhian values again very, very significant, that if we begin to learn in our reflex action, in our natural behavior, that violence is not an option, violence is not a feasible option, because violence only generates more violence. As we say popularly, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. So, how to train individuals to become satyagrahis? And then, of course, satyagrahis would work for Sarvodaya, which is rise of all, not rise of few. Again, that is again a major challenge. The kind of capitalism that we are noticing around us, the kind of news you get in middle of pandemic that rich people are becoming more rich and poor are becoming poorer. Nations have now faced larger number of people who are described as poor, or in India we call it below the poverty line. How ageless, timeless values Gandhi wants to inculcate in himself, to present himself as an example and not simply preach things and create things that I think would be sustainable, which is the fundamental challenge to us today, whether it is protecting environment, whether it is protecting ourselves from enormous stress and violence, whether it is giving us freedom to achieve our potential. In all various fields where we find that humanity is facing enormous challenge today, return to Gandhism, I think, is increasingly being recognized. And we notice United Nations itself is increasingly using some of the Gandhian values and philosophy. Various universities around the world are increasingly teaching now Gandhian studies and Gandhian philosophy increasingly. So I'm greatly happy to see that Professor Lakhvinder Singh is part of that initiative in Korea, where the focus is in building this Gandhian cultural community in South Korea. And then I think that really should not just make us much more aware, because Korean perspectives on Gandhi will make us learn definitely new things that maybe we in India do not see. Maybe we breathe Gandhi as air without being fully aware of what is totality of Gandhi. So I look forward to this initiative leading to some very interesting works in the coming days of giving us new interpretations and new ideas about how Korean scholars or Indian scholars in Korea look at Gandhi. And I'm looking forward even now to listen to other panelists and learn from this discussion. In case there are any questions or comments in my way, then I will be happy to try to respond to them. But I want to sincerely thank all of you to allow me to speak first, and of course make me part of this discussion. And I'll be delighted in future if I can contribute in any way to promotion of this Gandhian cultural community initiative in South Korea. With that, and with my very sincere thanks, I revert it back to the host of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It was very, very insightful points that you could flag off, and I think all our speakers in this whole dialogue will come up with something very, very concrete. In fact, our own experience here at Gandhi Smriti, as you pointed out, more and more universities. In fact, I will like to use the term quote unquote madness for so many, on the Gandhian values. And for the last more than 1 year, we have been doing with such a huge number of universities all across the world, right from say Malawi to Uganda to Kyrgyzstan, Indonesia. So a lot of interest that is there, and that is the need of the hour, because everyone feels that there is so much of turmoil within and also turmoil outside. So how we promote a balance. Questions for Professor Singh?
Sir, I have one question, practical question.
Yes, please.
So, as you know, in Korea, there's too much focus on economic growth, but all the spiritual growth, the spiritual balance has been completely ignored. So what kind of practical advice you would like to give to Koreans to refocus on a spiritual part of the human development? What Gandhiji said. So what can be done now? Practically we can do now.
Thank you, Professor Singh. The practical initiative you're already taking, but I think world over, it has been seen that countries like South Korea, which has been an enormous economic miracle, or China, which has been another larger size, economic miracle, are particularly the countries that have become far more conscious of values. Because once your basic material requirements begin to be fulfilled and you feel enriched materially, humans immediately turn to finding more cognitive satisfaction. engaging with ideas. And we have seen that as an enormous challenge in all rapidly developing societies in Asia, Japan, China, now Korea, that rapid development materially leads them very directly in search of values that they hold very dear. And when the values is in question and are being sort of looked for, then Korea's own traditions of whether it is Buddhism, which I'm told about 1/3 of South Korea is Buddhist, or it is their own traditions of peace in Korea, or their liberation struggle narratives on non-violent struggle in Korea, or the contemporary peace studies in Korea, would definitely go on increasing. In fact, I understand that, it could also be related to the fact that because Korea saw very, very rapid economic development, is why recently, I feel proud that Gandhi has become much more engaged icon from India with Korea. I remember for a long time it was India's great poet Rabindranath Tagore that was very famous in Korea. But we saw that in 2014 in Busan, Gandhi's bust was inaugurated there, and that led to a lot of discussions during that period of time. And more recently, in February of 2019, another bust was inaugurated in Seoul, in Yonsei University. So in that sense, one can notice that Korea and Korean society, and you remember, Moon Jae-in calls Gandhi as a compass for inter-Korean relations, for peace on Korean Peninsula. So we notice that their engagement with their own peace traditions, their own values, and therefore through that lens with Gandhi has seen a sudden upsurge in last about 10 years or so. And that is a reflection that, this is definitely going to connect India and South Korea much more closer, because trade relations, incidentally, trade is showing certain negative growth lately. But trade relations are not the ones that really cement relations. Cultural relations, spiritual relations, intersocietal relations, people to people. All countries, when they have good relations, they want to promote people to people relations. So Gandhi's increasing awareness in South Korea, to me, is a reflection on both Gandhi becoming relevant at global level, but also yearning of South Koreans beyond material success into spiritual depth of themselves, and from that depth connecting with other similar civilizations. And I'm sure Gandhi Darshan Smriti is extremely active in these engagements with you, and the fact they are doing this joint event with you is a reflection of enormous enthusiasm. And it's an honor for India if other countries wish to engage some of the great iconic figures from India, and their contributions bring us together. So, to me, practical initiatives that you asked me are already happening, and because they're happening out of the result of a groundswell for that demand, that yearning, they will continuously expand, and I think we will see India, South Korea coming closer in coming times. I think Professor Mishra had something to say also.
It's always a pleasure listening to Professor Swaran Singh's, the persuasive approach and the Gandhian. My point is, Professor Swaran, how do you look at, the inculcation of Gandhian idea vis-a-vis climate change? Can Asia, Africa, parts of Europe, they can, concretely move forward for this climate change? That's what interests me.
Professor Mishra is himself aware of these issues, but let me just very briefly mention the fact that Gandhi used to build ashrams one after another, whether in South Africa or in India, is a reflection of what kind of ashrams he wanted to build, which were closest to nature and self-sustaining, and which is a reflection of how climate change can be addressed. The problems of climate change are a result of what Gandhi would call greed of human civilization, excessive consumption. And Gandhi was completely against. Look at any of his ashrams and the routine that he builds in those ashrams, the kind of clothing, food, everything, even the teaching techniques are an example of something that perhaps world is gradually awakening up to as a solution to our climate change threats, which are becoming existential challenge to us. So Gandhi lived by example, as all of us know, and his various ashrams that he has set up are ideal model to see how best we can see a particular model can protect us from the climate change threats. And the mention that you made of Africa and Asia also is very interesting, because Asia and Africa have had those traditions, ancient traditions, where people have lived very close to Mother Nature. In fact, many experts describe as to that is why these societies missed the bus of industrial revolution, because this was not part of their civilizational DNA. They wanted to stay closer to Mother Nature. It is only out of colonialism that they were exposed to industrialization, urbanizations. And therefore, your connection that Professor Mishra you made with India and Africa is very interesting and relevant, therefore. And last 10 seconds, one last point. Next 50 years, both the population explosion and economic growth explosion is going to happen in Africa. And if we can protect Africa from 19th century industrial revolution aping of that model, we will be doing a great justice to humanity in that sense. And I think this becomes a responsibility of all of us who are here. People like me have some interest in Gandhi, but some of you are Gandhian experts, some of you are Gandhians yourself. This puts onus on us perhaps to then bring that to light, that as there is going to be enormous awakening and explosion of growth in Africa in coming 50 to 60 years before it tapers down, what kind of model we want to see being replicated in those countries and cities and villages. So in that sense, I think this connection across the world of people like us, some of you are much more intensely involved than I am. So I'm lucky to be part of this discussion today. I think there is an opportunity here, that there's an opportunity for all of us to make our little contributions to how all the challenges. In fact, I want to close by saying, put your hand on heart and think of any 10 challenges that humanity is facing. Gandhi will be relevant for all 10 of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Swaran Singh. It was very, very enlightening listening to you.